Good afternoon. This is Sidney Freeman, Dr. Sidney Freeman. We're so excited to provide an additional uh, a conversation with Pastor Souffrant regarding decolonizing the Black Adventist mind. We've been having some great conversations so far, starting with Claudia Allen yesterday, and we're so excited to have the good pastor here, and we're going to bring him on now. How you doing, Pastor?
I'm feeling well. How about yourself, doctor?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Um, just share with the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Pastor Lawrence Souffrant. I am the founder and pastor of a ministry called the Friday Experience, where ultimately our purpose and design is to experience God in a real, personal, practical way. I am, I guess, a knowledge enthusiast. I do a quite bit of reading. I support everything Black. And I am excited to be a part of this conversation. Real quick, I just want to give high praises to the Almighty who has blessed us with life and given us opportunity to be here today.
Wonderful, man. Thank you so much. So this is not going to be a long broadcast, but what we want to do is just give them a little taste of what they're going to get on Sabbath. So I'm just going to jump right in with the first question. What is decolonizing the Black Adventist mind, and why is it important?
Well, that's an awesome question when you think about colonization, the idea that a distant territory or country is under the control of another authority. When you think of what it means to be Black, which has a variety of definitions. But if I go by the part one series, we're pretty much descendants of Africa from the continent and the diaspora who have experienced oppression from white supremacy as Black, and then trying to define Adventist, which I think is where most of us struggle with, because we have Adventists have 28 fundamental beliefs that aren't quite fundamental. And so when we deal with decolonizing the Black Adventist mind, it is freeing them from a foreign authority, freeing Black people from a foreign authority that they may express themselves in freedom.
Wonderful. So I know you got Adventists that are looking at your screen. They're probably saying, "What is that? What is that incense or smoke coming up?" Can you would you mind just allaying the fears of our good old Adventists? Can you share with us what's going on?
Absolutely, no problem. Me personally, anytime I dive into spiritual moments, I light an incense. I light an incense of frankincense and myrrh, because those were the gifts given to our Messiah, the one that we call Jesus. And so it keeps me in the mind frame that the Almighty is in fact present and working.
Wow, that's heavy. So we talked a little bit about that first panel. Could you expound maybe on what Pastor Lola Johnson, Moore Johnson, talked about when she said, "If you aren't a member of the Adventist Church, you are not Adventist, and that's okay." What's your thoughts related to that?
Oh man, I actually agree with her. I am assuming that she's coming from the perspective that it's okay in the grand scheme of things, meaning that it doesn't offend the Most High whether you are Adventist or whether you are not Adventist. I will say this: part of the reasons why I no longer consider myself a Seventh-day Adventist is because I do not wholly agree with the tenets of Seventh-day Adventism. And I believe that since it is not necessary for me to be a Seventh-day Adventist in order to practice truth in the spirit, that it will be better for me to disassociate with the organization that is not in line with the revelation that the Most High has given me personally.
Could you unpack that a little bit? Because there's some people going to say, "Man, he's on a program about decolonizing the Black Adventist mind," and he's saying that I don't call myself Adventist anymore. Ronnie Vanderhorst did the same. Could you kind of just unpack your journey along those lines to kind of give the audience a sense of that?
Yes, absolutely, no problem. Well, I'll say this. I grew up Seventh Day Adventist, so let me start there. I am very much aware of what it means to be Seventh Day Adventist. Not really because of my upbringing, but more because of my training at Oakwood University.
Mm,
What I've learned while being at Oakwood University in the theology department, what I've learned about Adventism are things that I've never heard in my home church at all.
wow.
Ideas that Adventists hold on to that I disagree with. And I'm trained to be a pastor. And ultimately, if I sum it up really quickly, I'm trained to continue what Adventists believe, not necessarily challenge. And so in Adventism, we Adventists challenge beliefs and doctrines, practices, etc., behind closed doors. But if you're hired or if you are a part, then you have to go with the consensus in what you promote. And
Mhm.
my conscience just could not promote anything that I was not convicted to promote.
And what are some of those things that um, you weren't necessarily convicted upon? That kind of the Cliff Notes version. Some of the some of the main things that kind of come to mind.
Absolutely. See, and Doc trying to get me in trouble, right? So, I'll say this: I do not support Ellen G. White as a prophet.
Okay.
I don't support even Adventism's take on how prophecy works. What they say on paper, I might be able to support, but that would include her. See, there's no room in the gift of prophecy doctrine to exclude Ellen White, right?
Mm,
And so if you can say you believe in the gift of prophecy as long as she's a part of it. And I
mhm,
personally don't think she had the gift of prophecy. I believe Ellen White had a message that was given by God, like any other pastor. And pastors do hold a particular prophetic authority, but that prophetic authority dies with their ministry, and it dies with them. The fact that Adventists are trying to keep her alive means that they're putting her in a realm similar to how the Nation of Islam put the Honorable Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, where though he has passed on, he still holds some level of authority. I disagree. I believe that she was good for her time and not perfect, but good. Like
mhm,
she did more good than bad, I would argue. And the bad that she did was only a reflection of the corruption of her time frame, if that
right.
makes sense. So prophecy would forever continue to grow and shape. And so we have prophets now who are operating in that gift, recognizing the problems that exist in the world as well as in those who call themselves believers. But they're not getting the recognition as prophets in Adventism because there's no room for that in Adventism. So that's one. I don't believe in investigative judgment. I think that's counter gospel. I think this idea that God needs to look at some records to judge us is just ludicrous, to be quite honest with you. This idea that you have to have something right before your name comes up, when the scriptures make it clear that we have a lifetime to get to know God,
Mm,
and our judgment is either when Christ comes or when we die. And if we take Jesus literally, he says we're judged already. And when we believe him, then that judgment has changed. So there's just a lot of things with investigative judgment that goes against what I believe the scripture says. And there's others, but I think
mhm.
those two I can let y'all wrestle with.
So, do you feel like you've at least initiated the process of decolonizing your mind? Could you, and if that is the case, what does truly decolonizing the Black Adventist mind or the Black mind look like?
Okay, very good question. And I'm glad you make that distinction because the first thing we have to realize is that we're Black. Part of the decolonization process is recognizing that you're Black. Um, I know a lot of Christians who say, "Well, I'm Christian before I'm Black," which I get the idea, but the reality is the Christianity you was given was not something that our people practiced. And the Christianity you was given, not only was it something that our people did not practice, because there's nothing wrong with making corrections and etc. and evolving from what your ancestors practiced, but at the same time, the Christianity that was given to you was designed to oppress your identity. And so, in order to decolonize yourself, you have to first recognize that I am Black. And what does that mean to be Black? I am of Haitian descendancy, right? I am
Mhm.
my last name gives it away, right? I come from a bloodline of revolutionaries. I come from a bloodline of warriors. I come from a bloodline that assists other people in gaining freedom. That's within my blood. And so when I feel this need to free other people spiritually, it's not just out of nowhere. It is something that flows within me. I come from a bloodline that survived the most horrific Holocaust to ever exist globally in recorded history. I recognize that that does something to how I approach the world. And so a decolonized Adventist mind needs to first recognize a decolonized Black mind must first recognize what it means to be Black. And if I talk about Adventism specifically, what makes Black Adventism so Black is that it was able to create a culture within an oppressive system.
Wow.
That's something that Black people have been doing, because you cannot silence, you cannot suppress our energy. We are powerful people. And so Black Adventists recognize that they're not white Adventists, but they don't put in the work to identify what it means to be Black. And what I like about the sovereignty piece that was brought up in the first panel was that as long as you are under the oppressive system, you'll always be limited to expressing your Blackness, because Adventism, what we would call white Adventism, is Adventism. So when someone meets you and you say you are an Adventist, there are presuppositions and assumptions that come with that are valid, because if someone read the literature of Adventism, they will assume that you believe that.
Right.
If you're going to decolonize the Black Adventist mind, you have to identify what it means to be Black, and then identify what you mean by Adventist, which has been a struggle, I would say, for all Adventists.
Right. Right. So you talked a little bit about your Haitian descent. Could you talk about one of the questions that I have been asking is kind of, you have like the American descendants of slaves here in the U.S., and then you have those from Africa, you have those from the Caribbean, and we've been kind of unpacking decolonization from the standpoint of our ethnicity. Could you talk about how that may look different, or if there is any difference, given ethnicity or our place of origin?
Okay, very good question. It will look different because, let me use the U.S. because it's a common understanding, right? Black people in the U.S. are not a monolith within the U.S. You meet a Black person from New York, the culture is different from a Black person in Atlanta. Culture is different from a Black person in Houston. And so though we have a common origin, we eventually create our culture based on where we are and how we choose to express ourselves. And so it's the same thing globally. When you deal with Black people in the Caribbean, they're Africans. But because of their separation from the continent, they express their Africanness differently.
Right.
And so it will not, and this is natural, because even in Africa not being a monolith, we all started from one place. If we deal biblically, we all started with Japheth, Ham, and Shem, right? So and Noah, all of them knew the Most High God according to the biblical narrative. But as these nations began to migrate and create culture from within themselves, their expressions look different. And so when you are decolonized, you are free to express yourselves organically based on your personal relationship with the Most High God. A good book that might help with that, it doesn't deal with spirituality, but it deals with how outside influences can put us on a reverse path. There's a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by, I believe his name is Walter Rodney, or Rodney Walters, who is one of those two first names, right? But he deals with how Africa was developing. Europe disrupted that development and then started moving Africa backwards. And I would argue that at large Christianity, but specifically Seventh-day Adventism, has done the same thing. When I went to Ghana, I was expecting a Ghanaian worship, though we were Adventists, but I was in a church with native Africans wearing suits and ties, singing the same hymns that we sang in the US. Well, for some people, that sounds like unity. For me, it looked like colonization, because we didn't contribute to which hymns would be hymns.
Right. So, um, what is something that we should look forward to coming up on Sabbath from this discussion?
Well, I'm gonna be as honest as I humanly can be. Um, I believe in being honest. I believe in being honest. I'm trying to find a way to phrase it. You're gonna get raw honesty from me that comes from love, if that makes sense. But I'd rather be raw, honest, and understood than sugar coated and misunderstood. And so for me, you're gonna get a lot of that rawness that says no, that's not accurate, or that's exactly what it is, depending on which side it is. You're gonna get a lot of historical references because I believe in looking at history to understand our present. And then you're gonna get some thoughts that may not be palatable to Christianity, but if we had a chance to converse, it would be in line with who we believe the Most High to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're ready to drop some seeds on us
Yeah.
on Sabbath. Just before you go, I know you talked a little bit about sovereignty, but what is that? Let me just throw that in the mix. What is that when you heard sovereignty? What does that mean to you?
Well, for one, I believe sovereignty is the answer. Let me just say that flat out. I believe that Black Adventists have to remove the yoke because one of the problems in Black America specifically, but I would say in Black people globally, is this need for white acceptance.
Right.
And so, if we're not sovereign, while Adventism may not look like it's creating a problem, the truth is our leadership is hired by a larger structure. That structure has the power to shut them down. Whether they utilize that power, that's another conversation. But if the larger umbrella is not in agreement with how we do things as Adventists, they have the power to shut our expression down. And so, what sovereignty means to me is the only people who have the power to move us forward and to hold us back is us. And if we're not ready to take on that responsibility to be free, then we'll forever be slaves. We'll forever be colonialized because at the end of the day, the upper and we talk a lot about money, right? But the upper entourage doesn't really care what you believe until it directly affects them. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as they keep getting paid, believe what you want to believe, but make sure this tithe keeps coming up, right? As long as we keep baptizing and we make them look good, because from a business perspective, Adventism at large has numbers that benefits them in the global market. Let's just keep it 100, right? Our numbers benefit them, whether we like it or not. And so I believe there should be people on the inside working to reform it. But I also believe that that's not necessary. And I would say it's even too late for that. I think it's time for us to learn how to be free. We can't preach a gospel of freedom and still be in bondage. And the only reason why Adventists want to be Adventists because they still don't believe that the blood of Jesus is sufficient. They need to be a part of the remnant in order to be saved in these last days. And that ideology is what's keeping Black Adventists in bondage. Sovereignty would remedy that. Sovereignty would help us realize that God does honor us as Black people, whether we're Adventists or not. And so I do believe that we need to be freed completely.
Wow. Thank you so much, Pastor Souffrant, for dropping those seeds on us today, tonight. And I know on Sabbath, where our audience will really enjoy what you'll have to share. What I'm going to do now is just shift and share with the audience our speakers for the next upcoming days. So tomorrow night we'll have Dr. Ty Douglas from the University of Missouri at Columbia to talk with us about decolonizing the Black Adventist mind at the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Friday, we will have Pastor Michelle Moda from Texas to come and share her perspective on decolonizing the Black Adventist mind, but from an Afro Latinx perspective. And again, I want to remind our audience that on Sabbath, Saturday, September 12th, this upcoming Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can get the full panel. All those powerful voices that you'll be hearing this week, they'll be all on one panel at one time, unpacking some of these ideas even more with regards to decolonizing the Black Adventist mind. You can find this information. You can find a way to access the stream of this information on my Facebook page that you can see on the flyer there at Sidney Freeman Jr. My Facebook page there, and then please subscribe to my YouTube page, Sidney Freeman Jr. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this broadcast, and we pray that you have a great night and are able to access our 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 uh, our broadcasts on tomorrow and Friday and Saturday. Good night.